Hello and welcome to Afterlife Adventures. In today's episode, haunted tunnels. Are they real? Some people think so. For example, let's examine the Drakelow Tunnel. Constructed in 1941 in the UK, they were originally built as a World War II shadow factory, developed during the Cold War to be a fallback government center. The Ministry of Aircraft Production wanted to build an underground factory used for use by the engine or gun factories in the Birmingham area. The underground factory consisted of a number of tunnels laid out in a grid system. The Drakelow site was decommissioned and sold in 1993. On November 27, 2013, a warrant was executed on the property. The operation resulted in the seizure of 885 cannabis plants. Since 1993, visitors and owners have been witness to several unexplained events. The Rover Archives reports that Harry Drepper and two colleagues, while working in the tunnels, were crushed to death when Tunnel 1's roof suddenly collapsed. Mrs. Mary Ann Brettle was accidentally hit by a dump truck and later died from shock just outside the tunnel. Conveyor belts were installed in the tunnels to remove loose rock caused by blasting. Two workers decided to ride the conveyor belt out of the tunnel, where they were both mangled by the machinery. The last known death was Mr. Eric Newman. He was the security officer for Goods In and Out, one of the manufacturers established in the tunnel plant. While leaving on his motorbike, he was struck by the coach driver who drove employees in and out of the tunnel. To this day, it is an abandoned walking tunnel, and there have been reports of faint music from the 1940s, but when walking into the tunnel to investigate the whereabouts of the music, it would suddenly stop. As they would walk away, the music would start up again. Dogs are seen growling at nothing. People report feeling watched, drops in temperature occur, and people report being pushed. Number 9, Moonville Tunnel. Now a ghost town in southeastern Brown Township, Ohio, little remains of this former mining community except foundations, a cemetery, and abandoned railroad tunnels. Built in 1856, the Cincinnati and Marietta Railroads were going through Ohio to reach Cincinnati. It was built to haul coal and clay off of Samuel Cass's property, who wanted the railroad on his land and offered it for free. Residents had to walk the railroad to get to the nearest town, and this proved to be very dangerous. In 1920, 6 people lost their lives on the tracks, and the most recent death was a 10-year-old girl in 1986 who was struck by a locomotive outside the tunnel. 4 different ghosts are reported being seen: the engineer, the brakeman, the lavender lady, and the bully. The engineer is just that, the ghost of an engineer that died during a head-on train collision. News reports have reported engineers see a ghostly figure wearing an all-white robe, holding a lantern, emitting a blinding light. He walks across the tracks and disappears. The brakeman is the ghost of a drunken man who was working on the train's brakes. He was reportedly drunk and fell off the train, where he later died. Visitors to the tunnels have taken pictures of the tunnel, and a figure appears in the photos after they are developed. The lavender lady is a thin, elderly lady seen walking along the tracks, whereas she is seen falling off the track, but before making contact with the ground, she disappears. The bully is believed to be the ghost of David Baldy Keaton, who was a resident of Moonville. He was known to bully people by bear-hugging them. A group of men jumped him and killed him. The ghost of Baldy is said to stand above the tunnels and stare at visitors approaching, sometimes throwing pebbles at them. The last scheduled train near ran through Moonville in August of 1986. Number 8. The Portland-Shanghai Tunnels. Seattle found out that the elevation was too low because the city was flooded out every year, so they built a city on top of the original one. Savannah and Portland wanted underground connections between buildings for convenience to deliver supplies from ships in the harbor. At night, these tunnels were used for unlawful acts of kidnapping, sex trafficking, drugs, and also prostitution. Some of the bars and taverns had trapdoors that opened into the tunnels. Unaware customers were sometimes drugged and then dropped, where they were taken to the river and sold as slaves to the ships at the harbor. Visitors claim to hear disembodied voices, screams, and groans, or they feel like they are being followed in the tunnels. With the tunnel's horrific past, it's not surprising it's not haunted by the victims. There have also been reports of a female apparition named Nina who frequents the tunnels. Number 7. The Donner Tunnels. Mr. Theodore Judah wanted to build a railroad through the Central Pacific, routed via the Sierra Nevada mountains. The tunnels were completed in 1867, and the first train to pass through was in 1868. Mr. Judah did not survive to see the completion of his dream. He died while working on an eastbound voyage in connection to the train's project. The tunnels were constructed by Chinese laborers and took more than 15 months to complete. The laborers built the tunnels using hand drilling, black powder, and nitroglycerin, resulting in an unknown number of deaths. The Donner Tunnels are named after the Donner Party, a group of explorers en route to California who became stranded due to heavy snow and resorted to cannibalism to survive. The summit tunnels were closed down in 1993, and paranormal groups have recorded disembodied voices, strange lights, and even the sound of a train approaching. It is a beautiful place to hike. Number 6. Located in Fukuoka Prefecture, Japan, the old Ananaki Tunnels are famous for the gruesome deaths and murders inside and out of the tunnel. A 20-year-old man was a factory worker, was found burnt to death. The perpetrators, a group of teenage boys who were later arrested. It is also said to be a training area for Buddhist practitioners. For thousands of years, it is said to be a spiritual hotspot of lost souls. The tunnels are now sealed off with concrete blocks, but there is an opening at the top if you dare climb over. Number 5. The Phase Rug Tunnels. They have also been known as the Marathon Tunnel, the Blue Ghost Tunnel, and the Grand Trunk Railway Tunnel. They are located in Thorold, Ontario. The tunnel was built as a more durable way to cross the new canal via vehicles. Its last known use was in 1915 when Harry Eastwood, who was the last engineer to drive a train through it. In 1875, a 14-year-old was crushed under a large rock, and a 13-year-old girl was reported to have been struck by a train outside the tunnel. In 1903, there was a head-on collision that occurred, where 2 trains were involved. A total of 107 people have been killed, and 2 died during the construction of the tunnel. There are reports of voices, cold spots, and changes in temperature, and also reports of physical pushing while walking in the tunnel. Reports of a blue light ghost have been reported, giving it the name the Blue Ghost Tunnel. There is also a claim that hundreds of remains were left in a local cemetery that was flooded by the dam. With this amount of death, do you dare visit this area? Number 4. The Screaming Tunnel of Niagara. Located near the Niagara Falls in Canada, this tunnel was built in the 19th century, and the Screaming Tunnel is the result of a tragedy that happened over a century ago. One account of this urban legend is that a young girl who ran away from a burning barn nearby ran into the tunnel to the water that was normally in the tunnel. She was found laying in a puddle with severe burns, where she later died. It is said that if you stand in the tunnel at night and light a match, a gust of wind will blow the match out and the screams of the little girl will follow. Number 3, the Summit Tunnel of Santa Cruz. The South Pacific Coast Rail was designed to connect Santa Cruz to Alameda. They wanted to extract redwood from timber to transport it. The construction of the Summit Tunnels, aka the Wrights Tunnel, was constructed in the Santa Cruz Mountains. Chinese laborers started construction in 1877. Rotten sandstone and clay oozed into the cavity as workers tried to extract it, making a 10-month project take 3 times as long. At midnight, November 17, 1879, a crew of 21 Chinese laborers were preparing a blast 2,700 feet inside the mountain, where a fire ignited a massive pocket of gas and created a huge explosion that shook the entire mountain. Both men were covered in burns, and as they stumbled out, a second explosion happened. All the laborers lost their lives. The next morning, rescuers found a grisly scene. They found the charred remains of corpses and mangled machinery and flesh. The tunnels have been abandoned ever since. Number 2, the Sensabaugh Tunnel. They are located in Churchill, Tennessee. The tunnel was constructed in the 1920s. In the back of the property behind the tunnel, there is a white house located, which was once the home of Edward Sensabaugh. The home is still located on the property, and legend has it that, well, there are 2 versions. Number 1, Sensabaugh confronted a robber with a gun. The robber grabbed Sensabaugh's baby boy, carried it to the tunnel, and drowned it. The second version is Sensabaugh himself went mad, killed his entire family, and dumped them in the tunnel. It is also reported that Sensabaugh was sick of local kids hanging out in the tunnel near his house, so he would scare them off by screaming at them. Stories say that if you park your car in the tunnel, you will hear babies crying, women crying, and your car won't restart. Joe Sensabaugh reports hearing this her whole life. There are also reports of Mr. Sensabaugh, Joe's father, being seen in the rearview mirror of cars in the tunnel, or you will hear his footsteps approaching. Number 1, the Paris Catacombs, the city of the dead. By the 18th century, there were so many deaths in the French capital that the cemeteries were overflowing. Grave diggers started burying corpses one on top of another until there was not enough soil left to bury them. Decaying corpses became visible to the naked eye until city officials finally decided to reopen the centuries-old tunnels that existed beneath Paris in the 13th century to use them as a burial place for Paris's dead. More than 6 million Parisians were buried there, which started the Paris Catacombs. It took 12 years to move all the bodies. It is now open to visitors, and there are extensive reports of orbs, voices, strange shadows, and a notable ghost, Philibert Aspect, who haunted the catacombs that are over 200 miles in length. In 1793, Philibert got lost in the catacombs and was found dead near an exit 11 years later. Every year on November 3rd, the day Philibert went missing, he comes back to pay visitors a hello. Do you dare pay the catacombs a visit? I would. Thanks for watching Afterlife Adventures 10 Haunted Tunnels. If you like this video, please subscribe and give it a thumbs up.